Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 110 of the WatchRolling Podcast. The WatchRolling Podcast is a veteran-owned podcast that focuses on horology while sharing valuable resources with the watch enthusiast community. My name is Jason. I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Episode 110 is going to be an interview with Huiy Tang of RZE Watches. Awesome watch company. Got to meet Huiy first time at District Time in DC. We have a nice conversation about him, his journey as a watch enthusiast, as well as RZE watches and what they're doing and what they plan to do in the future. So I invite you to tune in. Huiy's very knowledgeable about a lot of stuff, not just a watch brand that he works with. So I invite you to tune in, check it out. Without further ado, let's get into the interview. Hey, Huiy, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Jason? I appreciate you having me on.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm doing great. It's a nice evening for a watch chat, talk about RZE watches. And while we're here, so without further ado, tell us a little bit about yourself and RZE watches.
Yeah, so I'm Huiy, and I'm with RZE Watches. I've been with them since 2021, late 2021, but it was founded in 2020 by my partner, Travis Tan, and his childhood friend, Clarence. I came along in late 2021 to kind of work with him on developing the brand and pushing us a little bit further.
Awesome. I've noticed it's a pretty popular independent brand when we go to some of the shows. Specifically, we met at District Time. And so if you can enlighten us a little bit on the whole MO for RZE watches and what you guys are trying to do, I think it's pretty interesting, especially with some of the ancillary stuff around just the watches.
Yeah, so we're RZE, and so we were founded around the idea of making tough titanium tool watches that are kind of bringing strength from weakness. So one of the primary weaknesses or things that people dislike about titanium is the fact that it typically would corrode or be scratched, especially if you bead blast that finish. And so in 2020, Travis brought Ultra Hex to titanium, which is kind of a DLC type clear coat or a treatment that when applied to the titanium can increase the surface hardness to 1200 hardness figures, which is 8 times harder than regular stainless steel or around 3 times harder than grade 5 titanium at the surface. And so all of our watches are titanium and all of our watches are scratch resistant. That was kind of the initial ethos of the brand, built on creating a product that would outlast and survive all kinds of outdoor activities as well as adventure settings. That lends itself to being really great for an outdoor lifestyle brand. And that's kind of where we pushed into kind of looking at the users that we have, which are in the EDC community, as well as real outdoor users or what we call professionals in their field. That kind of pushed us deeper and deeper into kind of the, like you said, the ancillary products, as well as the EDC community, kind of focusing on where watches are being used and what they're being used for, as opposed to kind of just being collected. One of the things that we like to say is that as an adventurer brand, obviously deep diving is encouraged, but desk diving is welcomed. So yeah, that's kind of a brief rundown on our identity.
Nice. Yeah, I have my master's certificate in desk diving. It was a long, arduous road to get here, but I managed to pull it off. Thanks to everybody that was along for the ride. No, well, you talk about the EDC stuff, and I think that's a fascinating part, because I think if anyone's been paying attention to the industry and been to some shows, the EDC stuff's really creeping in, right? I was at Wind Up in New York City in 2024, and there were some knife companies and Wind Up Watch Shop. They had some EDC stuff. So share with our viewers a little bit about like the EDC stuff behind RZE, and if there's anything you can share with us that maybe people don't know about, that's kind of cool. That'd be cool. But if not, just kind of tell us how it all integrates with each other.
Yeah, I think that coming into the brand being focused on outdoors and kind of our own personal lifestyle. So Travis and myself and Clarence, we all enjoy hiking and outdoor activities. Kirk, our creative director as well, he's kind of really entrenched in the EDC community. He's a photographer that's been involved in the EDC community for a long time. And so kind of he was who introduced me to the brand and introduced myself to Travis. And we're being based in North America and outdoors people, like that's the kind of gear that you kind of get into alongside with watches, of course. When we were working together, one of the things that we talked about a lot was kind of what is the other buy it for life gear that we would look at, and what is the other stuff in our lifestyle and kit carry that would be a similar quality. And that's where we kind of started really getting deeper into EDC and the flat lays, because we found that the other people that were interested in titanium are obviously the people who are interested in EDC, looking at frame lock titanium watches as knives like CRK, or people who are really interested in kind of that one adventure knife like a paramilitary 2 or something like that. And so kind of looking at all the side things when you're looking at that buy it for life or build it once, keep it forever kind of items, EDC is really part of that. And I think that, especially for a young man or a young gentleman looking at things that represent ourselves as kind of a symbol of our identity, as well as personality, as well as kind of the things that you expect to pass on to, let's say, your sons or your brother or your nephew or whatever. Kind of those heirloom pieces are typically part of our everyday carry. Those are the things that come with us at work or come with us to, our out adventures and stuff, and that we make memories with those things. And I think that when we thought about that, it's not just the watches, but it was like the ancillary stuff, whether it be our brand or somebody else's. We wanted it all to be kind of within that wheelhouse. So when Travis and I looked at making a bag, we wanted to make a bag that was inspired by helmet bags, inspired by kind of the Longchamp travel bag, and him being a commercial airline pilot, just like a easy extra luggage bag was really part of what he wanted. And from an EDC standpoint, as well as a kind of a gear standpoint, we wanted to make it guaranteed for life. No questions asked. Like, this is a tote where you can actually guarantee it for life. When we made a knife as well, we made a small frame lock everyday carry knife that fits in your fifth pocket, that you can fly in Canada with it. So it's flight legal in Canada. It's not really flight legal anywhere else, but it's the appropriate length for that. And it's really about the gear that we want and the gear that we believe in. And that knife is guaranteed for life, D2 steel as well. And so kind of taking an approach to our watches that's the same as curating any of our EDC. We're really particular about that. And we know that our audience is particular about that as well. And I think that that's a kind of a big part of the brand ethos is our 3Ps, is like people, product, and planet. And when you look at the product and the planet part, it's always kind of like sustainability and durability, not just from a green standpoint, the way that we focus on making sure that our shipping and downstream kind of carbon is offset, but from an actual everyday usage standpoint, is that if it doesn't break and it's not something you throw away, it's meant to last forever, or like lifetimes of adventure. So yeah, hopefully that answers that EDC question.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know I've noticed this problem across a lot of stuff. There's a couple of different people that you run into. There's people like me when it came to watches, where I've burned through so many different makes and models to get to the two I really want, right? And I've learned a lot through there. Then there's the people I think that are fortunate and they have some mentorship, or they're part of a group, and they kind of realize early on that there's stuff that's made to last forever, right? So, and sometimes it might cost a little bit more. Sometimes it's just as affordable, and you're lucky and you luck out and you find it and you get this one piece. Me and my wife talk about it all the time, because my wife, it bothers her that so much stuff made for women is like, it's meant to be around for like a year and then they got to toss it, right? Whether it's shoes, whether it's, bags, whether it's, sneakers or whatever. And, we talk about watches all the time and stuff, because she has her own watch collection. And she's like, yeah, like, I don't always want diamonds in my stuff. You know what I mean? Like I want something. She's a teacher, and she's like, I want something I could wear to work. A kid sneezes on it and another kid, trips and falls, and, or I bang it on a door, it's going to last. She has some pieces that are built for life pieces, and I think it's crazy because, I've learned, being a teacher spouse, like how much of a battlefield that classroom is, man. You know what I mean? Like your stuff gets beat up. It just gets beat up. So, but speaking of beat up, let's do a wrist check, because if we don't do it, then I'll forget about doing it. I'll do mine first. I always let the guest go second, so we can talk about your watch more, but I'm wearing my Panerai PAM 01090. Right.
Nice.
I wrote a whole Instagram post today about how this is a tool, and I really believe that it is. I think the more and more I wear Panerai, the more and more I get it. And I think it's a lifestyle, which I think can apply for some EDC stuff too. because if you have a life that you really do stuff, that is your lifestyle and it goes along with it. But we're not here to talk about Panerai. That'd be a great show too. But what do you have on your wrist today, Huiy?
Yeah, so it's a Valor 38. It's our remastered edition, so it's the newer model of the Valor 38, and it's just on our sequel strap, so our fabric sustainable strap, 57-gram field watch. Interestingly enough, it's actually the first watch, the first campaign that I worked on with Travis with RZE was actually the Kickstarter campaign for the original Valor 38 launch, and this is our remastered, so updated and recently launched, I guess last year. It came back for another run. I really like your Panerai, by the way. And
Thanks.
It's a good fit. It's a good fit for the show, actually, because when you talk about lifestyle and kind of like the brand identity of Panerai and the Paneristi and Luna Rosa experience and things like that, I think that that's something that's inspired us as well, not from a luxury standpoint, but looking in, initially like Arnie and Stallone and things like that, like or people like that, they were looking for a watch that was like a tool that was fit kind of the lifestyle, like wrist size, as well as kind of the perception of what a person like the Black Seal guys were doing and stuff, that just fit kind of those Stallone movies and stuff like that. And I think that it does generate kind of a following that was an identity built around the lifestyle, which was either inspired by or aspirational to what the legacy of Panerai was. And I think that even though we can say, quote unquote, like popularity has waxed and waned in terms of like luxury or watch market around Panerai, the lifestyle has never gone away. The people who are wearing Panerai that are now kind of like, it's because I think what we see is a resurgence as the strength of the brand has come back. We see those automatics and the hobnails and the all these different references of the Luminor and stuff just kind of like regaining value as we're seeing dive watches and Omegas kind of like drop a little bit. And Panerai is kind of like gradually creeping up again, because I think that lifestyle and looking for a piece, like you said, kind of when people are building a cornerstone to a brand like Panerai can hold a really strong place there, just like Hublot or any of these other kind of like, I don't want to call them unicorns, but sometimes they're like a little corner of the watch universe where it's like can be a little bit divided. And it's that division is often around the lifestyle and not being like, hey, it's a money thing, or it's because a lot of time the watch comes in like the investment part, or the I'm picking a luxury item that's a cornerstone, like I want it to not lose value. But sometimes if it's a lifestyle thing, you're looking at a tool and over the long time usage of it in your lifetime, the value kind of not diminishes, but it's not part of the thing anymore. You're really looking at a t-shirt or a thing that represents who you are and what you've done with it. So yeah, it's something where I hope and I aspire to kind of being around for long enough that we can have that identity with RZE, and that someone's like, yeah, I picked this not because the price or not because the titanium or whatever, but part of that thing, the lifestyle, the tool, the identity. And but the cool thing about Panerai is that it doesn't matter if you have the entry level or quote unquote entry level or like the ultra special edition Panerai, like you're all Paneristas. It's all kind of like there's a real identity to it. And yeah, I really respect that.
Oh yeah, thank you. In full disclosure, this one's not mine. This one's in loan to the channel from Bo from Bo Knows Luxury, my buddy. Bo was a guest on the show as well. I had a PAM 0177 titanium. That thing's beautiful, no date, but I sold it because I'm getting the camera of my dreams, and I really, really have wanted this camera for a long time. And so that deal's almost done, but we're not a camera channel, but I'm gonna get Panerais in because it's just something. I mean, I got a 7 and a 5/8 inch wrist. So, I mean, I'm not a small guy, and it's just something about him. There's just something about him. So I want to learn, but I've done that with other brands too. But yeah, there's definitely a lifestyle thing there. But let's get back to RZE, and we were talking about the crowdfunding. So kind of walk us through that. How did the early experience from that shape RZE and their long-term approach?
Yeah, I think so Travis, coming from kind of in 2020, there was a lot of watch brands that were using crowdfunding to launch kind of find an interest, I guess, in the enthusiasm market, find their niche and reach that audience. And it was the most effective way at the time. 5 years later, I think it's a very different landscape. But even um, in 2021, when I was talking to Travis, before we kind of got going in 2022 together with launching the Valor 38, was like crowdfunding is really effective in terms of finding your initial tribe or the people that are enthusiasts, but that usually kind of has a trickle down effect, right? Like I think that you get all the people in that are interested in the thing at a certain price point, you offer them a great value, and then you hope that there's an audience after that hammers on and picks up the piece at a higher price point, kind of believes in the thing and keeps it rolling. I think as the hobby grew, more people were doing crowdfunding and more brands were using it. Like every time there would be a new model, you crowdfund, and obviously you're exhausting your primary audience when you go through it. And so like our first model was the Resolute, and now 5 years later we've iterated on it 4 times or so, and now it's kind of like reached its maximum level, but or not maximum, but it has it's all the bells and whistles from our development and in our watch journey now has all those things. But like we're going to be releasing new colorways later, and it wouldn't make sense for us to crowdfund anymore. Excuse me. Even like I think the last couple models we did a crowdfund with the Urbanist, but we looked at it kind of moving forward, thinking it's not necessarily the right recipe, because even though it was a great way to start, and it is a great way for a lot of brands to start and continue, to be honest, I think it's like important to find your people early on. But as you continue on, and we're wanting to kind of offer great value to all of our customers and not diminish the value of the old products, and as well as kind of not be reliant on the niche paying for the product. We kind of wanted to pivot from that. So after we had a few crowdfunding, I guess, models, Travis and I talked a lot about how we wanted to keep things in stock, because that way when people stumble across the brand or they find the product, they don't have to wait until the next crowdfund, or they don't need to wait until the next thing. And that was really a big challenge, like kind of escaping from that, or I don't want to say it in a disparaging way, but like leaving that model of kind of like that drop culture or the building the hype in the community, and then taking the money out of the hype or taking the money out of the community. Like when there's more and more things fighting for that crowdfunding attention, you understand, as being a member of the watch community, you do want to support these things. You want to support the other things. And I think that it's not only more competitive in that field, but you're also taking away from people who are genuinely trying to give it a go. And not to say that we don't need it. We definitely need it in terms of funding our inventory and funding the next run. But in reality, it's just like we have to take on the risk ourselves, as opposed to kind of counting on the community to take on the risk. There's been a shift with that over time, certainly. We really value our Kickstarter audience, as well as our people who've crowdfunded all of our projects along the way. Like when we did our knife and our bag, we definitely wanted to crowdfund because we reached a lot of the EDC community, or community that might not have 350 or $400 to spend on our brand, and they might appreciate our watches, but they want a little bit of the brand without necessarily buying a watch, because that's not them. That's a great reason for crowdfunding. But I think to keep kind of going back to it for another model or another dial variant and stuff is what we wanted to kind of divorce ourselves from, not because we're above it or anything like that, but just because it's you can't always have a brand that develops longevity. Like we're hoping to have 100-year brand. We can't have that longevity if we're really relying constantly on having the community take that bet, as opposed to us continuing to take that bet for ourselves and keeping that important staple product in stock. We've got to keep the Resolute in stock. We've got to keep the Valor 38, that field watch, in stock in some color variant or something for the people. And I think that that's important. And so when you're doing crowdfunding drops, often people miss out too, or they feel like they missed out because of the price point and things like that. So just kind of a progressive change in thought on that has really built the brand. It's not to alienate people, but it's to kind of strengthen the community. And the great thing is that with our sustainability program, we developed this Verified program where we allow people to trade in all of our watches at any time in any condition. It's something that I saw Carhartt does, as well as Patagonia and things like that, like outdoor brands that inspire us, like real workwear or real outdoor wear, even like hard goods stores and stuff like that for outdoor gear. They allow that so that you don't feel like you're losing that value. And I think when I talked to Travis a couple of years ago, we implemented that. And I thought that that was a better approach than crowdfunding, because we wanted to get some pieces back that people were just having sitting in drawers, and we wanted to give them some value. So we said 40% of current retail is what you get. You trade it in. We service those, and we sell them on at 70% to people who are looking for them. Lots of the time when people are enthusiasts, they're looking for a piece and they want us to run it again and do 50 or 100 or whatever it is that is limited edition. In reality, the appetite in the market for enthusiasts is smaller than that. And I think that it's a risk to kind of take that on. But if we kind of encourage people to send in their pieces, people kind of get an opportunity to experience pieces, experience the new pieces, and keeps it going without necessarily just funding another run and having them sit or whatever. It's yeah, we've definitely shifted and kind of worked around different approaches to funding and finding our way.
Yeah, it's pretty smart, because I've watched the Kickstarter stuff, and I think that brands, if they're not careful, they set an unrealistic expectation, especially for pricing, right? So,
Yeah,
people are going to expect that everything's going to be X percentage lower than what the watch should really sell for eventually, right?
absolutely.
And that
Exactly.
hinders you having stock, right? Because stock costs money based where you live. There's different taxes for inventory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I know what you mean about the drop thing, because I've done early on. I started getting into watches like 2019. So I stopped doing Kickstarters almost entirely altogether. Because it's kind of like, well, because it's always unusual. It's always like two watches for the price of one and a half. It's like, do people buy two watches at the same time? Like, I really wonder. Like, I think about that. It's like my wife and I did it for some chronographs we got. They're Mecha Quartz before, when I was in my learning phase, and they're great watches, but I can't sell them. I try to sell them. I'm just going to give them away, because I'd probably sell them both for like $150, right? And I think that brands just walk a careful line with that. I think it's cool initially to gauge interest, right? And then you reward those people who are interested early with good prices. But almost immediately, there has to be some number crunching to say, hey, look, this is what we wanted to sell. This is what we sold. It seems there's an interest. Let's introduce them. Let's get a little bit of stock. And then let's see what the market does. And then, we need increased stock, but this is the price we're going to sell them at. And then you'd be surprised, because I think, especially because it's really hard to see the watches, bro, on Kickstarter. It's real hard. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got to do like sleuthing. Are these pictures or are they renders? Like et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of crazy. So the Kickstarter thing obviously went pretty well. You guys have a great plan. One thing I've wanted to know is, tell us about the name RZE watches and the story
Yes.
behind that.
So Travis, my partner, when he founded it, so when they started the first campaign, he was really inspired by Zinn and kind of like German design and the kind of the Thule watches that the Germans make, like obviously like Zinn. So the coating is inspired kind of like that submarine steel that's hardened by Zinn, right? And so him being a commercial airline pilot, he liked the German noun or the word Reise, to travel. And he thought that it was a good representative of a representation of what the brand identity that he wanted to create was. And so that was actually what the initial Kickstarter campaign was founded under, was Rise watches. Obviously a play on the English sound Rise as well. And over time, I think there was some issues with feedback in the community as well. Like they thought the word mark was like, oh, it's weird to have a noun kind of like word marked on your dial, as well as I think that there was some issues in the EU with various trademarks and stuff, it being just kind of like a generic
Yeah.
noun. And then we moved to the logo, and then I think kind of these decisions were made before me, but kind of the idea of how Rolex or Kodak or all these other brands from the past draw from kind of taking a unique letter like a Z or X or whatever, integrate it in, and anywhere around the world, someone can say that word or that name mark, kind of being like, oh, it's RZE or RZE or Rise or whatever. And it kind of nods to that. When we when I came in and started working on the brand identity, I wanted to not divorce ourselves, but kind of focus on the logo as opposed to the word RZE or RZE or how we say it and things like that, because I wanted to kind of over my lifetime work on making that iconic and making the colorway iconic. Not to say that we don't appreciate where the name is from and stuff like that, but I find that it can be difficult to explain.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense because I remember hearing about you guys when you were Rise. It was REISE, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember that. And I remember you changed. And then I remember the logo. And I was like, oh, that's not bad. Because, there's not naming any names. There's been plenty of brands who have gone through numerous iterations. There's a weird thing where people don't want like another person's name on their watch.
Yeah.
There's all this stuff, right? And I'm a big font guy. So for me, it's like, people talk about Rolex. Like, talk about all you want. The Rolex looks great on the dial. It works. They always get the sizing right of the letters. Everything is balanced as far as, font goes. And there's other big major companies. I'm not naming any names. There's people that change their logos for no good reason. And I'm not going to name any names, but there's a brand who had a beautiful logo and recently changed it. And it took all the whimsy away from that brand for me. The aspiration, the everything. I don't got to name names. You probably know who it is,
Yeah. I
but
know.
like it's like killing a dream. Like you killed a dream. Like you killed an aspirational piece for someone, especially if you like to fly. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's tough because we don't want to like, even when we move from the crowdfunding thing, we don't want to alienate ourselves from the original audience that was excited about the brand. Like you said, we don't want to kind of take away that aspiration and stuff. And so that's where we are careful. But the other flip side of that is there's brands where I can't get behind them because of the name marker or because of whatever it is. And it's like I wish they would change, but I also understand that it's really tough to make that change. One of the things that we were talking about too is like making RZE happen or that logo become more identifiable is like trying to like make fetch happen. Cause it's just like you need to see it so many times.
yeah,
And it's like I was listening to something the other day about luxury and like Tom Ford and what he's done for different designers and things like that in the haute couture or couture world, where in the luxury houses, they kind of think that you can change the design at any time because the most important customer is the customer that pays at that time. And I think that that's what we want to try to avoid, but also in the industry, while we feel alienated as enthusiasts, I think that it's a play that we see happen because there's a need to kind of reinvent themselves for a new audience. And so I'll pull from something that I guess is like common knowledge in the world is like when people used to say to Jean-Claude Bivard that like people don't like Hublot or that they don't like what they're doing with the Big Bang and stuff. He's like, yeah, you say what you want, but like the typical buyer of Hublot buys 12 of them at retail. And it's everybody else who's buying a different reference of a Hublot. Like they might just be buying one and that's their Hublot, but the one that he's serving and the one that he cares about is that audience that's like really paying. And I think that, like you said, for some aspirational brands or brands that we might like, we won't name names, is they might change because they've already alienated the original audience or they're trying to find that new audience. And I think that it gets tricky because I respect that people want to keep building that brand, but you got to find a way to not alienate our audience. Kind of going back to our watch thing, to keep giving people the value that we gave initially is one of the things that we kind of have to, even though we're not crowdfunding anymore, we kind of have to. We want to make it accessible because if we push into luxury or something like that, it's the reason why we have such a broad price point as well, is that if we push into luxury, what we initially came in for on Kickstarter to be able to make a build for life watch kind of last a lifetime and be accessible to the everyman, we can't price ourselves out of that, because if we do, then we alienate that customer. And one of the things that I want a kid to kind of like graduate through the brand. And like one of the things that we have is like the trade-in program for the opportunity for someone who, if they trade in their Kickstarter watch, they're not going to encounter what you and your wife had. They're going to be able to trade in their watch for almost what they paid, and get into another piece. And that kind of was for us a real difficult crunch the numbers exercise, because Travis like, hey, we can't necessarily lose money on taking these watches in, because like obviously we got to pay a watchmaker and service them and things like that. But one thing that I wanted to say was like, beyond money, anybody who's believed in the brand long enough to keep our watch to want to trade it in, whether they had to hunt it on eBay or whether they had it, it's like they're going to get another one. And cost of acquisition of that customer, that lifetime customer, is like way more valuable word of mouth than anything else, than any discount or any coupon code. And not to say that Travis was a tough sell on it or anything like that. It's just that it was really deliberate that we had to really think about it. Is it's about taking a bet on yourself to say not 60 days, not whatever, is like for life and in any condition. We didn't want to do a grading system or whatever, because then people would come back and be like, like, why are you grading it like this? We're like, well, it's scratch resistant. Who cares? It's the reason why we went with titanium as well, as that like you're allowed to, wear your watch for 30 days, beat it up or whatever you want, and then send it in. No questions asked, return it if you want. We don't want it to be one of those things where you get stuck with it and you regret it. It's like we were saying earlier about watch shows and not being able to catch everybody sometimes. It's the same thing when you order a watch. We don't want people to go through that buyer's remorse where you're like, this is a lot of money for a lot of people. Like everything that's over the price of F91W, I think is a lot of money for a watch, because I do believe what people say in that, like, I have a phone. Like, why do I need a watch? It's like, it's time. You maybe don't need it, but at the same time, if you do need it, you really need it. And it's a discerning thing after that. But you're right, like something simple can do most of the things. And if I can't explain to you why it's compelling, we shouldn't have to try to convince you for the sake of money. Somebody else will find out, and somebody else, like, it's just might not be the right audience. So,
well, and at a certain point, like the time you take to explain to somebody, you're losing money. And
absolutely.
And then also like, the person that isn't happy with the watch, that you let them return it. Well, their buddy, he or she brings up a watch and they're like, well, RZE is really cool. Like, I got the watch. It wasn't really for me, but they let me return it and I made X amount of money back on my watch. You should probably check them out. That word of mouth goes a long ways, right? Because it's a company that's willing to work with you, and it's a face company. It's not a faceless company that's just taking your cash. So you talked about all this stuff, a lot of great stuff. And, we've talked about you guys using titanium. We've talked about durability and some refinement. So quickly, can you walk us through your design and development process when creating a new model? And then has any of that been based off of customer comments or community feedback, which I also know is a slippery slope?
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we focused on in terms of development, so we started with that field watch, and the idea of iterating on it, when Travis and I talk about it, or our whole team talks about it, whenever we talk about it, we are always trying to develop what we call a first dollar watch, not a last dollar watch. So we want to develop a watch that fits the niche, where if someone was saving up for a watch, when it's there and they go and get it, it's something they can have for a lifetime, as opposed to last dollar watch is like, oh man, like, I don't know, at the end of the month, like if Kickstarter is timed right and 30% off is good enough, I'm just going to spend it.
Yeah.
There's that aspect in watch enthusiasm. Like today's Prime Day is like, people might be like, I wonder what cool watch I can get on Prime Day. I want to get this Casio D5600. It's like, whatever amount of dollars, let's just do it. We don't want any RZE watch to kind of be that. From an impulse standpoint, we definitely, like, the digital is something that's intended to be accessible. When we develop all of our products, it's to meet one of the categories of something somebody saved up for that first dollar watch, and that could be their exit piece. So our solar watch, for example, when we developed the Urbanist, we wanted it to be guaranteed for life, is 36 mil, no date, easy peasy, charges in the chapter ring. It's a real actual GATA. You throw it in after it's charged, you throw it in your bug out bag, or you throw it in your boat or whatever, and it's just going to keep time. It's going to tick. It's like, either coated or Cerakoted, and it's like just a field watch. It's supposed to be a field watch that's 36 mils. Like, this is when we worked on the Valor 38, just a lightweight mechanical field watch. Like, if you're looking for a Hamilton, or if you're looking for something cheaper than the Resolute, but still has our field watch identity, still made in titanium, unique design language, that's what that is there for. It doesn't have a Miyoto movement. It has a Seiko movement because we want to keep the price accessible. Like we have a dive watch in 40. That's, I believe the Endeavor is kind of a great staple dive watch. Again, Seiko movement fits our bracelet, that fits everything. It's intended to kind of be so that you could potentially pick any type of watch, like our pilot's watch, and be like, oh, that's a tool for that. It doesn't just scratch the itch. It fits the enthusiast bill, fits our brand identity, and then is unique in its place. And then you kind of can go up to a luxury brand or whatever from there. We're really trying to fill that discerning consumer market for each of those categories, be it field watch, versatile watch, um, dive watch. That's kind of our thing. And so we're working on a 36 where you'll see something that later this year is more versatile towards the desk diver type watch. It's going to be kind of a more fancier iteration of something that we have, like the Resolute Pro has been, because we know that while you might aspire to adventure lifestyle, we still might need something that can be dressier. Or we have a collaboration that's going to be coming out that will be revealed by the time that this video is out. We're going to collaborate with Vario on something, and because they do the trench watches so well, it's out of our wheelhouse. We worked with them to collaborate on working on their case. Would it make sense for us to try to make what they're making, but we can work together on that? And that's kind of our brand identity when we're designing new products, when we're looking at our categories and stuff, is that, does it make sense to our audience? Will it alienate our audience? And how do we develop it so that it meets our user as well as a new user base? And so that was something where in the last year and a half, we spent the most of the time on developing our UTD, which is our Ultra Hex Titanium Digital. It's the first, I guess, independent or micro custom module digital watch. In our opinion, it's something that is quite an accomplishment and feat, because we focused on making it shock resistant, vibration resistant, water resistant, all those things. Is it the best in the world? Is it MRG level? Does it have all these functions? Of course not. But it's meets a user that's in our audience, and it fills a void where it doesn't alienate our audience, but it also has an opportunity to kind of reach an audience that brings them into the brand, that brings them into the lifestyle. And we hope that that kind of builds on itself.
Yeah, no, and I've seen that, and I think it's a stable platform. To use a military term, it's a stable platform, and it looks like something that could be built on, expounded on, added to, updated, and you would still keep that design language and people that were in on it early. So when the fifth iteration comes out, maybe they want the fifth one because they're like, oh, it's got this now, but it still has that heritage, right? And I think that's kind of cool.
Thank you.
So yeah, so the titanium thing is really cool to me because it's I think a misunderstood metal. I think that people think they know it. I think that it's something, the weight of titanium to me is comparable to like the size of Panerais. You have to wear them to truly understand, right? Because if you only wear a titanium piece for like 5 to 10 minutes, you can be like, oh, this thing's cheap and blah, blah. No. It's a different metal. It's lighter. I have a Grand Seiko SPGA 231, which is one of my 2 watch collections. So the diver.
Nice. Yeah, that's sweet. That's a good watch.
Yeah, it's a legacy piece for me. It has connections to my wife. It's one of my 2 core pieces now. And I love that freaking watch, right? It is the most presence-filled watch I have, with absolutely, I don't even notice it's there sometimes. It's the weirdest dichotomy. It is there. I know it's there, but at times I forget it's there, and it works. It's, and then I'm not even talking about the finishing and all that stuff, but you can tell if you look at the history of the 231 all the way back, right, to like the 029 and all these other things. They were onto something. They had a stable platform, right? And there's been slight, like, I have the 231, so the next iteration is the 436 or the 463, and that's got a loom pip at 3, and the minute tracks on the bezel are slightly different. That's it. It's the same freaking watch. Spring drive movement, fantastic finishing, all that stuff. And it's cool when I go around the independent watch brands and shows, and I try to be like a parent with a child. Like, you don't tell your kid they're great. You might tell them they did a great job, but you don't tell your kid they're great, because the 7-year-old thinks they're great is in for a rude awakening when they're 10. So, you know what I'm saying? So I'll give positive feedback to the brands, but it's cool when you see stuff and you're like, okay, this is just original enough and they're onto something. And I can see if they stay at it, they're going to have something really, really original that kind of, you know, I feel like all brands should have that core piece, that one core piece to start off with. This is what X is known for. And then
Mhm.
they tweak it over time, and then you dial it in, and then you're golden, right? And it becomes that, especially going back to what you said earlier, because I had a conversation with Mike Pearson from Christopher Ward Watches the last episode, and we were talking about Bel Canto and Loco. And I told him, I said, no, I think it's great. You guys have created aspirational pieces in your line, in your brand, for people that were in on Christopher Ward a long time ago. They can, the people that don't want to move up, they can still stay in the rest of the Christopher Ward realm. But for someone, like you said, the person that owns 12 Hublots, there's a Christopher Ward person like that, and
Yeah.
they're going to buy the Loco or the Bel Canto, bro. That's what they're going to do. And if RZE, maintains there's going to be a person that one time when you guys release this kick butt watch that probably costs a little bit more, but it's got all these features or all this capability, they're going to be the first one to line up to purchase that thing because,
Yeah.
they've stuck by the brand and you guys have stuck by your customers and kind of, continue to give them what they use, because I think that that's important. And I think for brands like you, it's even more important because you actually produce stuff to be used in certain things. I think other brands produce stuff, and if people use them in other things, then they're cool with it and they want to show it. But very
Yeah.
few brands have stuff that's intended to be used, like the Breitling Emergency or something like that. You know what I mean? So I think that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Thank you. I think that that's something where we really focused on it. And yeah, I did actually catch your podcast with Mike. I really appreciated that because I think that that's a great example of a brand in terms of like Christopher Ward, where if you look at where they started and where they are now over 20 odd years, it's like they've maintained their ethos and delivering value and kind of moving forward as the watch industry has allowed them to move forward. And now it's kind of on the bleeding edge of what I guess high horology or haute horology, and it's it's a real achievement for them. And so some people might look at it as like alienation, but at the same time, it's like a few years ago they had a in-house movement that wasn't that hot, and that kind of started the motion of them kind of developing to this point. And that's a point where it costs money, it costs time in the game, it costs all these things. And so I really admire Christopher Ward and what they've done in the game, as well as what Mike has done by working with the community to see what they want and things like that. And I talk to him a lot about kind of our brand as well. I admire him a lot and appreciate his support in kind of our brand, as well as just like I talked to him about our brand and our identity from a standpoint of I want us to be a thing that is really well known. Like you said, you kind of know that we're focused on a user experience or like items to be used, as opposed to kind of on the bleeding edge of horology and dive watches or whatever. Like we know it's important when we design stuff that there are enthusiasts that, for example, want Lumicast. But does it make sense for us to immediately rush to put it on our watches and then price it up to meet what the price of Lumicast is right now? It's not that we don't think it's great and that like that Lume is really important, but does it matter to our everyday consumer that's using them in the field? No, because
Yeah.
ALS is not saying, well, last year's Zona is like not as good as this year's because there's less Lume. I think that
Yeah.
like when we look at like the I guess the independent or the Kickstarter or micro community, lots of the time it's kind of built on a spec. It's built on what is possible, very much like iPhones or custom computers or anything like that. And so when Travis and I were talking about developing the brand and like its identity, it was really important when I came in that I said, I want us to work on something that's going to have an identity beyond a spec. I think it's really
Yeah.
important that everything that we do, going back to the kind of not a last dollar watch, is that everything we do isn't intended to scratch a itch or else it's just a little bit too Pinocchio. I
Yeah.
think that being a watch collector, like I've been in it since I was a child, like as a watch enthusiast. I was like 5 years old or something when I was like getting into it with my dad. He was really educational with it about different specs and their features and things like that, brand history and legacy, and that led me to become a certain type of collector. I think I collect a lot of vintage, and even when I got educated about micros and independence, I learned to appreciate watches without owning them. Much like you talk about Panerai and stuff, like I really appreciate a Speedmaster. It's cool. A moon watch is awesome. Like we all know the history and stuff, but you and I know is that I can go to any Red Bar meet or any meet and I'll see one.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much better is it to own it if it just sits in a watch box? It's not better at all. I can wind it, I can touch it, I can experience someone else's passion through it, and I can share that story and experience with them without owning it. And I think that even with a brand, we need to be careful. We need to respect our lane and we need to respect other people's lanes. And that, like you mentioned earlier about someone who we can put on to another brand, I love having friends in the community and in the industry where I can support other brands and say, hey, we don't do that, like Vario and the Trench Watch, but Vario does that really well. Like that vintage thing, like this person does that really well. Like it's not only does it move the industry further, it stops people from eating each other's lunch, as well as it helps us celebrate the people who are creating something that's intended to last forever. It's not that I
Yeah.
want to be disparaging about the Kickstarter brands. And I think that it's important that people are able to kind of leverage the power of manufacturing and make whatever you want. You should be able to get whatever you want if you want. We've seen it trickle through every industry, right? Like now you can have shirts with as many pockets and fabrics as you want. Like you do whatever you want. And I think that that's great with watches as well. But it's what we've seen in EDC and things like that, is that like a knife maker that sit in their garage and has been making knives their whole life by hand now has to compete with a guy who watched Forge and Fire last month and like is now in his garage making a knife and he's sitting at a booth. And like for a casual customer, they may not be able to discern the difference. And it is just noise. It's like, it doesn't mean that that person who made that knife from Forge and Fire is any lesser than the person who's dedicated their life to it, but the price point is different. What the itch they're scratching, the customer's itch is scratching is different. And person who buys that Forge and Fire knife or whatever, they'll graduate to eventually make it to that master knife maker or you know, journeyman or whatever it is. But at the same time, there's a lot of noise and we have to be careful not to get caught up in it. I think it's something that I really believe in.
Yeah. No, I agree. And it's a journey for everybody, man. Some people have a shorter road. Some people figure it out real, you know, and some people never figure it out. And that's their jam. I know people that have like 200 watches, you know, hats off. I mean, that is their jam. I couldn't possibly live with 200 watches, but you're talking about, you know, people figuring stuff out, people being able to handle stuff. You know, the first time we met was at District Time, great little show in DC. I really had a good time. Drove up there with my buddy Johnny, fellow Red Bar member, Red Bar Virginia Beach, and we got a chance to talk. I was really impressed with everything out there. So, for those people that haven't had a chance to go to one of your to see you at a show yet, what's your main goal in one of those shows, and what are you trying to do for the consumer?
Yeah, when I go to a show, I think it's most important for us to kind of let people have a hands-on with the product, as well as talk to us about the product and what it represents, what it stands for, and what we believe in. Our booth has some of our adventure gear, as well as like right now it features like a mallet so that you can smash our digital so that you can see that we're really serious about it being testable. We have some EDC tools from our partners like at Big Idea Designs, and like it has kind of a flavor of an outdoor brand. I want people to see that we're real about using it. Like I always show up with one of our t-shirts or our t-shirts, and sometimes I'll show up with a ball cap and stuff like that, because I think that it's important to kind of be approachable, and I try to have all sorts of conversations at our table, not necessarily with the intent to sell products, but to just be available so that people can understand who I am and who Travis is and what we're trying to do as a brand. I think because we have a wide range of SKUs, we bring a lot of watches and we bring a lot of range, because I think it's important for people to get a chance to see that we do have something for everyone in a way. And if not right now, probably not long. It's not going to be a situation where you need to wait an exorbitant amount of time for one of our models to come back or one of the pieces to come back. You might not get the colorway that you want, but that's an important thing for us. It's just helping people see that we're a brand that welcomes everyone who's interested. Like, just like we say, like, you know, deep divers are encouraged or desk divers welcome. Like, we really think that anybody coming to the booth is someone who might potentially participate in the brand or the lifestyle. We have lots of stickers and things like that because we want to encourage people to just get outside, do stuff, like be a part of it. I talked to Travis about it, and we often talk about brands like Snow Peak or Patagonia, again, like Arc'teryx and things like that. Like, what those brands were built around initially, like the lifestyle of climbing or camping and things like that. Not everyone is going climbing with their Arc'teryx stuff every day. In fact, few and far between. But it's that feeling that you know someone else is doing that thing and they're really using that. And yeah, that's the way that I want it to feel at our shows. There's a reason why with our marketing too, that we try to use everyday adventurers or professionals in their field as opposed to looking for celebrities or things like that. If you look at some of our content and our lifestyle content, some of it's, I guess, influencers or ambassadors and stuff, but there are kind of people who are doing the thing, whether it be in the military or first responders or tree planters or whatever. It's kind of like a guy who is inspirational to maybe like 10 other guys and their friends and things like that. And like an outsider might look at that as a young person or something like, hey, I can make a career of that. We believe in making watches for professionals and professional adventures, not as in like, hey, you went to school and you have a certificate or whatever. It's like, if every day you go out and push yourself and do a thing, you can be a professional at it. Like, people will pay you for it. And I think that this is an example of like our brand as well. Like, I came in as an enthusiast of a lifetime and like left my career as a administrator for a high school and stuff, just kind of wanting to reinvent myself, and found this kind of, and being passionate about this and thinking like, hey, I can do this. And it doesn't mean that I went to business school or as a professional watchmaker or whatever. It's like, we can find our way and become a professional if we put our mind to it. Wouldn't dare go to Japan and tell a sushi chef that didn't go to culinary school, that's been doing it for all his life. It's like, you don't tell him like, hey, but you're not a chef. You call that man chef. It's just like, it's important. I think that we try to honor that, and in terms of everybody who shows up to the booth and just be excited that they might use it in their job. I think that that's something that I really try to connect with people on. Certainly we try to answer all the watch questions and all of the enthusiast stuff, but kind of drawing back to the beginning of our conversation, I think that our product is, I think, more than good enough in terms of quality and has the bells and whistles that enthusiasts would like, but we're not on the bleeding edge of the market. So if you come up to the booth and you're looking for a tool watch and you already have a Pelagos, it's like, hey man, I really love that Pelagos. It's like, we make titanium tool watches too. You look like you use your Pelagos. You let people know that we have the poor man's Pelagos. Like, we make that, but we appreciate that you're a watch enthusiast. I think that we know our audience, and there's also an aspect of like recognizing that you show up with a Panerai or something, I'm going to really celebrate that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Because number one, you never know who's at your booth, right? That person that's asking you about your watch could be doing could have just came off the doing real stuff. One of my favorite guests, and I consider a friend, Asha Wagner. She was on there. She's a fire captain in California, and we're both members of the Great NATO Slack, right? And I'll tell you what, the whole point with that is that based off that group and what I see people doing with certain things, influences me way more than any celebrity that tries to influence me in another way. Because I know people like Asha, people like Tom Place, he's a stuntman, the stuff that they use, they're beating it up. I'm like, all right, if they're doing it, and I'm a retired naval firefighter, so it's like, I'm not really doing that jam anymore. But like, if Asha's using it, I can really consider using it, because I know that she beats the living, out of it, and she stands by the product, right? And it's like, I just don't even hear, like, if I feel bad because these brands are spending all this money, and it's like, I don't care what that person is trying to get me to think. You know what I mean? Like, I know someone, so like when Tudor did the whole thing with Asha, I'm like, okay, that's legit,
Yeah.
because she really does get after it, right? Her and her team and everything. I think that's cool. All right, so we covered a lot of stuff today. I try to keep the show at an hour. Great time. We talked about, how you guys reach people, your design ethos, working with the community, titanium being the jam for RZE watches, which I think is pretty cool. Where would you and your group of co-founders like to see the brand in 5 years in terms of reach, community, identity, or design?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we always talk about is we want to build a 100-year brand. We want to kind of build a brand that people are going to grow up with and see ongoing. And so when we look at our sustainability mission, I focus on wanting to be carbon positive by 2030, not just from a green mission standpoint or from a greenwashing or something, but it's deeply personal to us. Once again, like I was born and raised in Alberta, like do a lot of outdoor stuff, really enjoy trail running and stuff. And I think that um, when we look at outdoor brands, they really focus on that user experience and being used in the field and things like that. And so um, when we worked on choosing a sustainability mission instead of 1% for the planet, we opted for something in my backyard here called Project Forest, where they plant trees in indigenous land and we rewild various parts of Canada. So we funded a food and medicine forest in Saskatchewan. So there's a indigenous community that's eating berries and able to forage from the trees that we planted. Right now, we finished that project with support of Project Forest, and they're planting trees on a shelter belt and just outside Calgary at Siksika Cree Nation. Because I look at it from a standpoint of, if our company from our profits or from our donations can plant trees that we can come back to and build on our mission, like being able to trade in our watches forever, having lifetime warranties on our digital as well as on our solar watches. It's something that I think even in 5 years, if it's bigger than us and beyond us, is that any number of people that come into the brand and whatnot, it's not my mission to be acquired, but like, let's say someone came and acquired us, the story of the brand and the identity of the brand would continue as it has, because you can't really backpedal on lifetime guarantee and we plant trees on these things and stuff. And I think that a couple of years ago, when I first worked with Travis and we made our first campaign with the aspirations, and it was shot in Vatnajökull, like literally in the glaciers, and the wash was like virtually washing into the ocean. And I talked to our creative and I said, like, I'd like to get this into National Geographic Traveler. Like it's a ridiculous price from a publication standpoint. It's not what we'd usually do in watch media and stuff, but it was our 300-meter diver. It was like just a really big full send in terms of representing our ability to make a tool watch. And I referenced the poor man Pelly. I think that's what we reference the aspiraria as sometimes. And Travis was like, why do you think that that's a great idea? And I was like, because there's a kid that has a dad that is subscribed to National Geographic Traveler, and he's going to see that magazine and he's going to be sitting in his house and he's going to flip through it and he's going to be like, RZE, I like saw online once, like on Kickstarter, like that's not that expensive. And
Yeah.
maybe he would have like bought an RZE because he saw it in National Geographic or whatever. And like, it's the new version of, if you were doing this, you would be wearing a Rolex or whatever. That's what I see in 5 years, is building this lore and building this community and building the brand identity to represent something that's beyond us, that's greater than watches and greater than spec, greater than Ultra Hex and the coding. But beyond that, it's really the community of people doing stuff, like actually adventuring, the professional adventurers and things like that. So I look to our adventurers that we feature sometimes on our Instagram, and I often consider where they will be in their careers in 5 years. Like Kurt Holland, who's making knives, he's going to take his master test, I'm sure, in the next couple of years, and he'll be, a knife maker that's dedicated his life to it since he was 17, making the most incredible custom knives in Tennessee. And that's really heartwarming to me that we were able to have a watch that is on his wrist in the forge as he goes through that journey. Yeah, I hope to see that kind of develop, because you can't really develop a history with a watch in a year or two. And we've been around for 5 years, which is great. But like in 10 years, or where Christopher Ward is in 20 years, it'll be incredible what people have done with those watches. And I think that Christopher Ward's a great example, like having made tons of unit watches and stuff. I think the lore of Christopher Ward is yet to come. And I hope that we're in that situation as well in a different way. So yeah, that's kind of the future look.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think you guys are onto something. We've had discussions about it, and I'm looking forward to it. Well, like with everything, it's a open invitation to come back. Try to keep these an hour. Do you have any last little nuggets you'd like to let everybody know, or anything you'd like to to tease or anything?
No, I think that's everything. I want to just thank the community for supporting us all this time. You know, we wouldn't be able to be here without support of you and the community. I think a lot of people who've met me along the way have shared some kind words, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that there has been dinner table conversations or red bar conversations, and it's because of kind of the crowdfunding and the community that we've developed that we are here today. It's why like our Facebook group is where a lot of our community meets. It's RZE Basecamp. And then we, of course, are on Instagram and other channels. So, yeah, I hope to be in touch with everyone. I'm going to be at Intersect next, I guess, later this month in LA. So hopefully we'll see people there. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a watch on people's wrists in the wild.
I'm sure you will. It'll be fun to watch. I'll be all the way over here in Virginia, but I'll be checking on Intersect. It's a great show. It's a great show. Well, Huiy, I appreciate everything, man. It was a joy having you on. Thanks for showing and spending some time with me. And remember, everyone, at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.